Hey guys, it's Jet here. We're here with Casey today. He's a rap artist and a producer. He's going to go ahead today and explain more about what he does and what he's about and all the different things that he's interested in and how he brings his art and music to regular people and what he's going to do in the future and his goals. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead here and introduce you to Casey. Here's Casey.
What's going on, y'all? KC the Prospect, rap artist, producer, songwriter, whatever you want to call it. And here we go, live full effect.
Okay, Casey, tell us how you got into music and you got into art and got interested in doing the things that you want to do.
Yeah, I started making music at the age of maybe, I would say 13, 14. And really, I just wanted to create something just to play basketball with. So I just started diving really deep into hip hop and just kind of understanding the history of hip hop and all the different sounds kind of coming out of that genre and how it came up to the current state of early 2000s at that time. And yeah, man, just kind of fell in love with the music and I wanted to just kind of produce. So I think I really just focused on producing and doing remixes. So I kind of started off as like a DJ. Doing remixes with like Tupac and Eazy-E remixes and mixtapes back in the day. And then, yeah, I just started going more into producing and making beats and hip hop instrumentals. After a while, I just needed a rapper and I couldn't really find a rapper that was consistent. So then I just kind of became that rapper over time. And yeah, man, the rest is history. So that's what it's all about.
So you got into it through rapping, or you just it kind of just molded together. You started rapping and you got into the DJ, or you got into the DJing first. How did that evolve for you? You said you were like 13 and that you were really young and you had a lot of inspiration. But if you could elaborate more on that, like how you got into that really and what kind of sparked your interest in it, and if you had any mentors or anybody that you followed or look up to?
Yeah, man, I think it just kind of evolved over time, man. I just really focused on really just trying to make the best music possible in terms of remixes and making something that was believable, and I think that was the goal in terms of making those remixes compared to the original versions of the songs. Then over time, I just wanted to explore more and just see if I could actually create an instrumental on my own. So, I tried to use a FL Studio back at that time, and I just kind of got more into the groove of things and just kind of focused on producing from there. And yeah, I think after a while I just really focused on being a producer and focusing on those remixes specifically. Then over time I just wanted to have a rapper that I could really work with and develop some really great content with in terms of just lyrical content, but I could never find that rapper. So I just worked a little bit more with the hip hop groups and seeing, where we could kind of go from there and what we create. And over time, I met some artists under Trophy Sounds, started connecting with a couple of local artists. And yeah, we did our best to really just try to create the best music possible. And I was the producer, and I became a rapper in the mix over time. And I've met some really great people along the way. And yeah, and to me, it was just about learning from other great artists and trying to develop my own skill over time and my own creativity. And yeah, I think that's how it came all about.
So was there one real big influence that really, set yourself on fire, lit a fire under your ass or whatever? I can say for me, some people that really lit a fire under my ass is when I was younger. I really got into some bands like Led Zeppelin, The Who. These are traditional rock bands from the 60s and 70s. Someone who inspired me a lot was someone like David Bowie. He had a really interesting kind of music, and he was really kind of unique for the times. But then later on, when I got a little bit older, around 13, I started getting into punk and got heavily influenced with punk rock. And from there, it just kind of punk rock, if you're not that familiar with it, kind of hit the planet like a comet. And all these people started you know,
Yeah.
creating little scenes and coming together. It was very underground. And, you know, getting back to that kind of thing is, you know, where I met you was at the Audio Space.
Right.
And, you know, Audio Space is a great place. You know, it's kind of like a startup for musicians. The guy Samuel, he's running it and stuff like that. But he's bringing people together and allowing people to come and connect. And then he is allowing people to go ahead and do like a performance. He's getting a show ready. I believe it's February 29th. I'll have to double check, but I think it's February 29th. And we've had some rehearsals and stuff like that. So tell us about your part in the show that you're, you know, working with, and, you know, maybe your act and stuff. That's where I met you, and, you know, so yeah, explain some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know the group has a performance coming up. I'm not necessarily going to be part of that. I think I'm going to just enjoy the festivities from that, you know, and just kind of, you know, take a look at some of the additional talents that we have in the group, because we have such an amazing group of talented individuals. And yeah, you know, who knows? Maybe in, you know, future performances, maybe there'll be like a KC feature coming up or something, man. But yeah, I think, you know, a lot of my musical inspiration really comes from like the 90s hip hop era, because in my opinion, that's like the golden era of hip hop. So, you know, I take a lot of inspiration from like Tupac, and in terms of like the voice itself, it's actually from Eazy-E. So like, I always try to like mimic my voice or moderate my voice in a way that kind of sounds like Eazy-E. And yeah, just from great songwriters from the West Coast, like, you know, Ice Cube, and I've always been a fan of Snoop. And in terms of like producing and production, Dr. Dre, you know, I grew up listening to like, well, I mean, I think all the hit records from Scott Storch really, and just like studying what makes a hit record like that, you know. But there's also really great producers like Just Blaze, and also listening to other East Coast artists like Nas and Jay-Z and Biggie and Big L, Wu-Tang Clan, of course. So I really took a lot of time to just kind of explore all those different parts of hip hop and where it kind of originated from and where it evolved to. And I think it all originated from, you know, East Coast, and then evolved into the West Coast, and it became what it was. And I think the Chronic really made the impact for that. So yeah, really just kind of studying Dr. Dre's production over time has been a really big influence on my own personal production too. But you know, it also comes from different places too. I'm a really big Kurt Cobain fan. Like, I really love Nirvana, man. And I think just in terms of like, just like, you know, some of his perspective like on music in terms of lyrical content, and even some of it might not even be the most applicable in life, right? But you know, I think metaphorically speaking, like, I think there's a lot of great stuff that comes from that music, man. And the whole grunge era is just such an amazing era to kind of like take things from, and even early 2000s hip hop artists. And I grew up listening to nu metal too, so that's always like always been like an interesting influence on my music and my lyrical content. Just in terms of like artists and bands like Korn and Linkin Park, and even POD too. Like, I've been really listening to like a lot of POD lately for some reason. But yeah, I think, you know, in terms of like my own personal lyrical content, I think that comes from just like personal experience in life, and it's all my own perception and interpretation of life itself, and love and relationships, and just trying to put my own philosophy into the mix of these different songs, and just kind of sharing my views with the world. And I think since it comes from a real place, a lot of people resonate with that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you mentioned like people who highly influenced me. You mentioned like Snoop and the Chronic. I mean, that was like big time shit. I was like,
Yeah, man.
you know, I don't know, probably like 22, 23, maybe 24, something like that.
Yeah.
That really was like a big time too in music. You mentioned like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana.
Totally.
Better learn how to say that right. I mean, that's actually like the song of like my generation, Generation X. I mean, that was another kind of whole thing that hit the planet like a comet and really took over. And it was like amazing, the songwriting skills and the feelings and everything that Kurt Cobain could bring. I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder like sometimes what would have happened if Kurt Cobain wouldn't have like did himself in and would still be around today. I'm sure he'd still be a superstar.
Yeah,
But I mean,
totally.
Kurt Cobain's a special kind of guy in that aspect where the guy has everything and is like
Hmm.
the biggest guy and he just kind of wants to be left alone. And,
Hmm.
we've
Yeah.
seen that with some of these different other stars,
Mm.
people like Prince or
Yeah.
Michael Jackson or,
Hmm.
like you mentioned Kurt Cobain. I mean, maybe it'd be hard even just to go out and just do
Mm.
regular stuff that you're used to.
Yeah.
But set aside from that, those people were like really highly influenced. I remember like, the early 90s was a very big time in music, not just even
Yeah.
in hip hop or anything like that, but I mean, even in industrial music
Mm.
and in, like rock music. One of my favorite bands from that era is called Sisters of Mercy. You should
Mm.
check them out. They're like
Yeah.
really good. They're kind of like gothic.
Hmm.
But enough of my history. Want to find out more about your history. So,
Sure.
where did you grow up, and what were some of the things you did as a young kid? And some of your viewers might want to know that, and your fans.
Yeah.
And tell us about that.
So I grew up in Sylmar, but I went to school in Sun Valley, kind of just like all over the valley, man. I ended up going to college, went to Cal State Northridge too as well. So shout out to the Matadors. And yeah, man, I kind of just been all over the valley, man. But yeah, I would say, my hometown, I mean, is definitely Sylmar, California, Sylmar part of the valley, and San Fernando Valley is the place to be at, man. Yeah, grew up having a lot of great friends and, a lot of, just, came across a lot of great people. I think in terms of like my own like lyrical content these days, it's been very influential, especially because like the passing of my friend recently, it's really put me in perspective, and it kind of puts you in perspective of like your own morality on things, And so it's gonna be, interesting to see, the transition from like, the previous album content to, what the content is gonna sound like now for this new upcoming album. So that's why I've really been focusing on, and I think it's gonna be a interesting product to see over time, man.
Awesome, great. Tell us about your work and stuff that you have on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think over the year I've been really focusing on just instrumentals and focusing on beat projects. So one of my most recent projects is actually Flights to New York, and those are all instrumentals that I made going out to New York and staying in Lower Manhattan, and instrumentals that I made on the plane. So it's just like a really long beat project, and it's actually really interesting because it has like sounds like going on the subway and walking up the street, and just people talking in the background, going to like a bar, stuff like that. So I think it's a really interesting and fun, adventurous beat project. And I had another project called Love and War, which very much kind of focuses on just like I like to call it like lo-fi, lovey-dovey type of instrumentals, even though it's probably not the right tempo, but it's an interesting mixture of it, right? Because like the first portion of the product of the album is like more so on a basis of like love songs, right? But then the second portion is like more up-tempo and like war. So that's why I was like, okay, I got both these like sets of instrumentals, how do I combine them together? And I came out with Love and War, because I kind of feel like sometimes maybe love and war kind of have like some integrations, there's like some intersections between what love is and war. So at least that was my interpretation of it. And so before these other albums, I had another project called 1906, which was a mixture of love songs and motivational songs and just my philosophy on life. And it was a really interesting time of making that musical product, right? Because I was, I was with somebody and I was just like in love, and the lyrical content was just really different. So I think there's going to be a interesting comparison between what that product sounds like compared to the new album coming out. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to hear, man. And I think I took a lot of time to really just focus on beat production and what KC the Prospect is supposed to sound like in terms of, you know, an artist, right? And what the background music and the background theme is going to be for this artist. And yeah, I think I really come to a really great place in terms of the boom bap sound and a mixture of the current sound. So I think it's going to be really, really fun and interesting to hear, man, for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I
man.
like to hear like inspirational stories. It sounds really cool how you were like talking about, you know, recording sounds and things on the subway and people's footsteps and all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, there used to be a time where people used to integrate a lot of that with the music. Now, I know like some of that, they kind of do that more with like a little bit of electronic music than actually with like rock or things like that. But there was a lot of like stuff that those kind of like sounds and things were introduced, especially during the 80s. There was a lot of times where actually, you know, there was like, you know, rock music and heavy metal, and then there was like punk, and then there was new wave, and then there was like 80s dance music, like what they call it right now is, I guess, 80s, I don't know. So there was a lot of bands that really were mixing instruments and mixing synths and stuff together. One of my favorite bands of that kind of music is the Pet Shop Boys. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but the Pet Shop Boys really, you know, kind of like took me. I mean, I was pretty young back then when they came out. That's probably about 82 or 83.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, in the high school thing, and you know, I remember, you know, thinking of like, I thought it used to say Western girls instead of West End girls, you know, with the guy's accent, but you know, thinking about girls and things like that. But also there was some other bands too, like, you know, that I liked a lot, like Ministry. Those guys have like, you know, utilized the, you know, metal with the synths and the industrial. And then there's like industrial music and stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of evolved in those ways too, but it's really interesting because I don't do a lot of electronic music. I don't really know how to do that. It's kind of embarrassing to say that, but I mean, I can kind of fiddle around with like Logic or GarageBand or something like that, but I don't really know how to do that. I kind of just, you know, plug in, I'll do like a drum track with, you know, usually the Logic or a GarageBand drummer. I'm using Logic a lot more now since they have it for the iPad. But since using that, I just basically do, you know, like a guitar practice some of like songs that I kind of make up or just things that I make up. And then what I'll do is I'll U-turn it, and then I'll take the recording and then do the second track with the drums.
Totally.
Excuse me. And then I'll do that with like the bass. And as far as like that, I don't really use that many electronic sounds or anything. But, you know, I think it's really interesting, like being part of like audio space and coming in contact with a lot of people who are and doing the hip hop and things like that. It's giving me some like ideas and stuff, because it's kind of weird, you know, like a lot of guys like me are, you know, older rock and roll guys, and you know, some of that electronic music is a little bit intimidating in a way, because you got to learn how to do it, and then making beats. I think that's kind of difficult. You know, it seems easy when you just kind of line the notes up together or whatever, the bass drum, and you know, you can do, at least from my experience, I can do basic stuff, but it's hard for me to like get 16 notes or different kinds of notes. Like if you were playing, so let's say you were playing the drums, you're like bottom, 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 ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da, or something like that, and I would get kind of confused. But you know, if you can elaborate on, you know, some of the things that you are focusing in on with your music, and whether it's beats or it's you're focusing in on lyrical content, or you know, like you said, you played some instruments. I believe you said you played bass and keyboard, a little bit of bass and keyboards. Like how you focus in on that things. Looks like we've had a little bit of technical difficulty, but it still looks good. We're still gonna go and keep running with it. So yeah, just tell us about some of those things that you're doing with music.
Yeah, man. So FL Studio has definitely been the tool for me in terms of DAWs. And yeah, I use the plug and play FL key, 25 key, which is like a drum pad kind of integrated with it, and I play the keys on that. And it's only been up until recently where I really decided to just kind of take on the bass and do something a little bit more hands-on. And it's just been a really fun experience, man, just to kind of get that natural sounding bass line coming into the instrumentals and the songs. And I think it really gives it like a different, some sort of like a natural feel in terms of like the instrumentals and the beat making process itself, you know. And I think when you do it that way, you know, you feel more of like a participant in the music, and you can feel the music a little bit more. That's not, you know, taking away anything, you know, from someone who prefers to just, you know, use the mouse and use the, you know, use the typing keyboard and all that. You know, I think that works for anybody and everybody, you know. And I think, you know, to each his own, you know, and you have to do what you feel is best in terms of your creativity. And I think, you know, having more of a hands-on approach for me is just best for my creativity itself. But, you know, I like to focus on the drum patterns and just having the right hi-tats complement the drums and the snares. And I'm really picky about the type of snares that I use. I'm really picky about the bass lines that I use. But I think for me, it always kind of starts from the sound. So lately I've been using Arcade, which is like a plugin in FL Studio, and they have just like hundreds of sounds that you utilize. And I like to start with that. And I like to start with getting like some type of emotional component out of that. And that's ultimately what creates the song, you know? And whatever lyrical content kind of pans out from that, I think it really just, it takes a bit of a different approach in terms of that inspiration. And that's what I like to start with. You know, I really like to just kind of start from that. And from there, you know, I could talk about my most recent experiences and my hopes for the future and my interpretation of those recent experiences. And sometimes it's hard to do that in a verse, you know, to try to compile everything that you experience all up in one verse and the next verse. And I think some songs, you know, do require a little bit more of a lyrical approach in terms of that. So it could take more time, but yeah, I really love the place that I'm at in terms of, you know, the composing of the music, man. I really love to just kind of focus on those instrumentals first, and I'll have stacks of instrumentals just kind of laying there, and then when I feel like the time is right, I'll just pick one of those and just start writing to it, man. And when I mean write, I mean by typing on my phone, but different way of making music these days, right? But sometimes I like to just kind of do it straight off of the head and see what kind of comes naturally to me. And what I notice from that is sometimes when you type things or when you write things down, sometimes for me it can be a little bit more of an emotional experience compared to just like, you know, something that's kind of unconsciously expressed in the music when you're doing like a freestyle. So that's, at least that's what I noticed in the music, but that's been some of my inspiration, you know, behind the music lately.
All right, cool. That sounds really cool. I mean, I like your vibe. I like what you're doing. You know, I liked you were like, you know, piecing out the instruments and kind of like thinking about it and letting them mesh and kind of like roll together. So tell us here, you know, in the last few minutes here while we've got you here, what your plans for the future and, you know, what's going on for Casey to prospect, you know, in the next year, next couple of years, you know, next 3 to 5 years, or where do you see yourself in that amount of time?
Oh yeah, man. You know, it's a really great question. I think for the next couple of years, man, just continuously making the best music as I possibly can and just working with as many artists as I possibly can. And, you know, I've definitely met some really great artists along the way, just working within our community and really just gaining more inspiration. And I think the more involved we are within our group, you know, especially with Audio Space, you know, I think the more inspiration we're gonna kind of get from that. So I have this new album coming out. It's called Balance and Loyalty. I think it's gonna be a really dope and inspirational project, you know, in terms of just where I'm kind of at in life. You know, I'm just, you know, I'm living my life. You know, I'm 33 years old. You know, living the single life and just embracing things as they come. You know, it's going to be more celebratory of life. It's going to be an album that really focuses on self-reflection and just, you know, my own personal philosophies of life, and, you know, see where it kind of goes from there, man. And hopefully, you know, just work, like I said, just work with as many artists as I possibly can. I think over time, you know, I would really love to focus on production again, you know, after this album, just really trying to get artists to the place of being the most creative and helping them get towards where they need to go. And I think as I get older, the more it kind of becomes less about myself and more about helping others get to that musical place. So that's where I see myself going.
All right, Casey. Well, tell us, you know, in closing here, how people can get in touch with you. Do you have a website? Do you have a YouTube? Are you, you know, you must be on social media, Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. Are you planning on doing any performances? You know, one of the things that I'm doing with some of my friends now is we're starting to do Twitch.
Yeah.
So,
totally.
you know, you're more than welcome to come check out my studio. It's over in Boyle Heights, just across the river from where we're at now.
Dope.
It's pretty much down the block, maybe 10, 15 blocks from here. Yeah. But you know, we do live streams. We're getting into that, and we're you know, trying to build a fan base and everything. And then, you know, my cover name is JetspankMusic, as everybody knows. We're trying to build that, but that's who I am on the Twitch, JetspankMusic. But you know, tell us how people can get in touch with you, and, you know, give us all your info.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, hey, man, if you're on Instagram, type in KC the Prospect. I should come up. I'll be the first one that comes up. If you can't find it from there, just jump on Google, type in KC the Prospect with a $. Go on YouTube, type in KC the Prospect with a $. I'm on Spotify, Apple Music, all platforms. So feel free to check out my music, and live shows to come, more music to come, and just, yeah, more dope music. So stay tuned, y'all.
All right, Casey. Well, I want to thank you for, you know, putting through the effort to come out here tonight and going through a massive amount of LA traffic coming from the San Fernando Valley over there, Encino. I know that's a long way. Yeah. I kind of dread going out there. I got a bunch of friends out there, but I don't really go out there too much. I'm kind of lazy. But yeah, so all right. Well, thank you. And if there's any last word you want to say, we'll say peace out, rock and roll.
Peace out, rock and roll.
You guys, everyone, have a great night, and make sure you like and subscribe, and come check us out. Come check out Casey. He's out there, KC the Prospect, the $. All right, thank you. You have a great day.